But without further ado, let's jump into today's workshop and crash course on remote prototyping and testing with DFA coach Nicholas Paredes. So excited for you all to be here. If any of your other team members are able to attend, just give them a quick ping so that we can ensure that as many people can see this and participate today as much as possible. But we know you have classes and things, so yeah, this session is going to be recorded and will be shared out in the meetings recap channel on Slack, and will be available for everyone to look at. But this is going to be really helpful for especially this project because it's all about the cycle of iteration of bringing things to life in prototypes and getting it in front of your YMCA partners. So this project is, again, a really exciting opportunity to create, to invent, and to tweak. And we're excited, and Nicholas is going to go over a lot of different ways you can do that, especially in the remote world. Before we jump into the project and the presentation today, just some quick Zoom norms for DFA calls. Your name should be your first name dash whatever studio you're associated with. And then if you're able to have your video up, that would be great. If you can't, totally understand. And then please mute yourself throughout the presentation unless there's opportunities to unmute yourself. Write questions in the chat. I'll be moderating and looking at those and compiling those, so we'll make sure all your questions are answered. But without further ado, I would like to now hand it over to DFA coach, Nicholas Paredes.
Hello. So can you see my screen? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Got some nods, excellent. I am Nicholas Paredes, and today we're going to talk about prototyping. We're going to do a quick welcome and intro activity, and then we'll talk about prototyping and co-creation, and of course, some nods to remote testing, because I think for a lot of people, a lot of professionals even, just relying on this is a new thing. And then we will close out pending for next steps and things like that, okay? So first thing I'd like you to do is, if you have a pen handy and a Post-it handy, I'd like you to draw your ideal chair in your ideal environment and share how you would feel sitting in it. So we'll do this for, let's just say about 3 minutes. How's that sound? So think about where your chair is. Think about how you sit in your chair. And think about how that chair makes you feel. Okay, 3 minutes now. Should have music, Ross.
I can't share my music if you're sharing your screen though.
Oh, that's so sad.
You can sing.
I'm surprised Zoom doesn't have like a jukebox or something like that that can you know, some sort of partnership with somebody. Okay, got a lot less than a minute now, so. There should also be an easier way to share things. Okay, close it on up. So during my last little workshop like this, I just moved to a new place, which is right by the lake, and I had just been sitting outside on the rocks, meditating by the trees. It was wonderful. Now they blocked all this off, so I can't go out there. But that certainly helps me feel peaceful, of course, and grounded. And when I don't meditate, I definitely feel that. So does anybody have one they'd like to share, put up on the screen?
Yeah, Nicholas, you froze on our end, or did you come back now?
Oh, okay. Oh, what I was saying was, does anybody have one they'd like to share now? I hope I don't have any issues with connection.
Drake, what did you draw?
Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah,
Let's see. So I drew my ideal study kind of situation. So I just have like, I don't know. Oh my God, with the virtual background, I don't know if it's possible to like share, but I'll just
the
like.
way I do that is I kind of put it on my chest and then I kind of lean forward and usually you can see it. Yeah, come on a little. There you go.
Oh, nice.
Not a crazy drawing, but so basically I drew a mesh chair because those are my favorites, like very breathable. And then I made sure to put wheels on it because I love wheels. And then also arms, chair arms, because that's also very important. And then like my ideal situation is just having it face the window.
Yeah.
And
Why is
that? I don't know. It's just like, because like you can control the temperature inside, so you're inside, but you also get the aspect of like looking outside.
Right.
So yes, that is my picture.
Anybody else have one they want to share?
Kia?
I can share. So excuse my poor drawing skills. So in my ideal situation, I would actually, I think, prefer to be standing. So the chair would convert into a standing desk. And then when I don't want to be standing, I like to sit in like crisscross applesauce or with like my knee up. So I'd have the chair have like enough space so I can sit in like the non-standard position and then have it fold up for easy storage.
Okay. So, like in this context, I asked you to draw, something to sit on for all practical purposes. And sometimes we'll get all kinds of ideas here. In particular, if I ask you to design it, to draw a chair, you will draw a chair. If I ask you to draw somewhere to sit where you'd really like to be sitting right now, it could be very different, from with these different contexts. And they, of course, support different emotional needs. So Kelly and I use this in a Designing Your Life workshop within the Cook County Jail here for a women's program. And it's kind of amazing if you ask somebody to just draw a chair and then you ask them to draw where they'd like to be. It is just a completely different, the environment factors in, all kinds of things factor into that. So I'm a designer. I do my own work typically. Right now I'm standing up a team I've stood up a team for American Family Insurance. And now I'm doing some strategic projects for them. But that, you know, I work for myself. So that's sort of like, whether it is contract or whether it's invoiced or whatever, I work a lot typically. Now, it doesn't mean I work less, it means I work more typically, because you never know when the work is going to end. But I went to Northwestern, got my master's there, and at the Institute of Design, and studied graphic design in Switzerland. But we're here to talk today about prototyping, which is something I've kind of taken on as my thing to teach, because there are a lot of people who do research, you know, better than I do, such as Kelly Costello, but there are not a lot of people who make things faster and in a bunch of different ways than I do. And so I really enjoy kind of like talking to people about stuff. This is IDEO's sort of famous prototype for how they engaged a doctor to talk about how they wanted to hold a medical device. And they just hacked some things together and said, here, is this what you mean? And that is what the person meant. And the doctor talked about how he'd like that to be, it was a he, talked about how he'd like that to be different, you know, for different, you know, let's say more angle and stuff like that. So how it fit him better. And then of course they probably talked to other doctors as well to get more understanding once they kind of like arrived at an idea. But the idea of prototypes, and they can extend from simple products all the way up to business, you know, and business strategies. So we can say, how do we test a product like an Uber? How do we understand what people want? And I do that through prototypes. So I help people identify new ways to do things, and we create prototypes to support those new things. And of course, there are people who've, you know, come up with models for this, such as design sprints, to really get out there and test these, not just products, but the business ideas themselves, to understand what people want and they need in these contexts. But our goal is with all of this, is to iteratively learn as much as we can. And that does take iteration. You can't just go through the cycle once. You'll learn a certain amount, but you'll learn a lot of the things that you already know. It takes 5-6 times to really get through, be testing stuff, to really understand what people really want, because you'll learn more and you'll learn how to ask better questions as you go on. And every now and again, you'll find somebody who comes up with really, really great insight. And so I treat prototyping as a kind of physical language, right? That it is a way to say, like this, it is a way to elicit, you know, conversations out of people. And so what are prototypes? This is the first mouse. This is how they prototyped it, to understand if people could understand interacting with a computer with an object. And at the time, that was a novel idea. And this is another kind of prototype that was described by Travis when they were designing Uber, you know, like, because one of the challenges was, you may not remember this yourselves, but I do. Why would I get into a stranger's car? Because that was a very odd concept. Even now, you think of that, and you sometimes, especially if you're a woman, you question that. You know, you question the whole interaction, and you want to be safe, which is why there are now different kinds of services and stuff. But we're focusing on not the prototype itself, but we're focusing on the behavior. And I don't know if it does click out. Can you see my my browser? No, you can't. Okay, hold on just a moment. Because it's going to run through a commercial anyway. So let me stop sharing, and then I will reshare, and then I will share my whole screen, and then you can hopefully see this. So maybe my internet connection isn't as fabulous as I'd like it to be right now, which is truly unfortunate. I'm usually in pretty good shape. Okay, that's not going to happen. But you have access to the deck and to the link. And what I'll actually do is see if I can copy this link. That's not letting me. Okay. Otherwise, I'd put it into chat. But Ross, you have access to the deck. If you could click that prototype or click that link and put it into the chat so people can take a look when they feel like it. But so when they were creating the McDonald's, this was a movie based on, you know, how McDonald's came to be. They went to a tennis court and they basically drew out a store, and they had people, a bunch of people, walk around and timed them and saw the interaction for actually making hamburgers and things. Because the whole idea was that they would be able to do it rapidly. It was you know, obviously a drive-in scenario at first, but there was, you know, the idea was that it was it was faster food, right? That you could get a quality product in a quick way and have a less formal environment. So they were testing the environment, bumping into each other, doing all kinds of things to understand where things should be before they bought a bunch of equipment and invested in a store design, if you will. So what do prototypes do? You know, they support the conversations, as I brought up. They represent a hypothesis. Like, you have to start somewhere. You know, with the store design or, you know, kitchen design, you have to start somewhere to see if it works and have ideas about why you think that is. They elicit reactions. In the case of people walking around, it's like, well, who do they bump into? What paths cross and things like that. And in design, there are all kinds of ways to chart and plot this stuff out, but seeing people do it is very different. They're as simple as possible. So that idea that you could just mark stuff down on a tennis court with chalk is like a really fantastic prototype, because it's cheap and it's fast. And it allows you to iterate and evolve very quickly if necessary. And they don't, like with the tennis court, they don't need to reflect the product. You need to ask yourself, what is it we're trying to learn? And how does the prototype inform that for you? So prototypes, you know, like this is the first palm prototype, that block of wood. If you remember the palm, know of the palm. This was a personal, you know, device for keeping track of your calendar and contacts and things, and later emailed and stuff like that. But the first question that Jeff Hawkins asked when he was creating this was, will I carry this thing? And so, and will I pull it out when I have to do something related to the tasks that I think are important? So he had essentially like a Post-it note on here to write stuff down. But he carried this block of wood thinking that this thing, the palm, would be about the size of that block of wood. So it was, the first question he asked was, you know, will anybody carry this thing? Because it makes no sense to design it if nobody's going to keep it in their pocket. What I'm always having to ask is, you know, like, how do people do their jobs? And what is it they need to do their jobs? What helps them do their jobs? You know, so like going out there with a bunch of sketches and having people, you know, comment on this stuff is really useful. Do you need a website? Do you need, what is it that will help you in your daily behavior in your job? You know, and in that instance, it was very much about, well, what I really need is data. You know, I need access to my data. Why is that? Because, well, I've got to take that data, I've got to put it into a spreadsheet, and all the other data sources go in there too. And I normalize the data and I check them against each other. Why are there small discrepancies between the information? When somebody as an asset manager is asked what a return is for the month, they have to normalize that data. They don't just take a bank's number or something like that and use that data. They have to validate it and verify it. So in essence, this button over here could represent that for a prototype. And it's a very, so the question you ask or you're getting at can be represented in a bunch of different ways. But this sketch was one of the ways I'd actually gone out with. So this was great because this was from a DFA, workshop, a prototyping workshop when we could all meet in person. And somebody was folding stuff up and apologized for how horrible it looked, and was in the process of building this nicer one over here, But the idea was that will people track their waste? So would you put stuff in here and track it during the day and then determine how much trash you created at the end of the day? May not all fit in there. There are all kinds of issues, but for a first test, that's perfect. However, I just said, this is perfect. This prototype is perfect because it gets at what we need. Spending more time on it, not really necessary. We're not getting any better information out of that. We might get different information. Well, I don't actually want it to be this shallow. I want it to be taller. I need to put bottles in there, all kinds of things. So, you'll get other different kinds of information, but don't think that you need complex prototypes to get information from people. And that leads to kinds of prototypes. What kinds of things do people create? Well, we've got concepts, which I had already shown you, and paper prototypes, and I've kind of shown you, but those can be different. Theatrical prototypes, which are, really useful and fantastic. Digital prototypes, of course, where I'm a UX designer, so I create lots of this stuff. Physical prototypes, such as the McDonald's, like at a later point, how does it become more physical, let's say, to represent the space? Nowadays, you pretty easily, hack together foam core and with glue guns and create, like stoves and things like that. So, and surface prototypes. So, the first thing that I will go out to talk to people about is like those concepts, that drawing I'd given you about data. And the reason is that I want people to start telling me, we're using that as a conversation to start learning more about what people are actually doing, how the services and businesses are organized, who they interact with, all kinds of conversations that we need to learn more things about. So concepts are a low profile way to kind of create those hypotheses that stake in the ground, just to say, look, this is what we think is going on. Let's go find out if that's really the case. In the case of like a product, what might happen next is we might create a website or an app or something like that allows people to kind of look at what might be on that screen and what the app might do and how it might help them. And so what's really important at this stage in the game is to say, oh, okay, would you use this app? For example, what kinds of things do you want to see on the home screen? When you go to the home page of the website, what do you want to see there? So this really helps us get at some really basic information without, again, getting into too much detail. People will react to this information in just a fine way. This was something, I don't think it actually clicks, but oh, let's go back. That one is an electronic prototype, but this is a video. And the idea was that these students in Mexico City, we're talking about like, well, what we're prototyping is a bus scenario where you want to be on the bus and have private space. So what would that be like? How would the seats interact? So they talked about the seats rotating and stuff like that. And they had people getting on this virtual bus and moving seats around and using the private spaces to work and things like that. And so by having them I videotaped it actually as they went through this process, you can kind of share that video with other people and talk about what you're thinking and have them see, what might work. The disadvantage is they don't actually get to feel that themselves. But at this point, that's not really an issue. And I do lots of this stuff, electronic prototypes. So we really want to see, like, for example, how people might they're on their trip and they might want to add a gas station. What? Oh, did somebody ask something? No, there's background noise. Oh, that's from here. Sorry. but I create lots of this stuff because what we're doing is we're testing with users to really understand, well, is that something you want to do? Do you really want to add another destination to your drive? Here's a way to do that. Would that be, too complex? Is it something you would do in a normal day? How would you behave in this scenario? So electronic prototypes really help us understand what's happening. This was something I was involved with at Walgreens. I was designing an iPad for a pharmacist. This person at the front is not a pharmacist. Out in back where it says ask your pharmacist is. And so there are all kinds of issues of how like an iPad could help in the conversation. They might have access to the person's records and stuff, and then you get into HIPAA compliance, which is privacy. So you have to have screens and shield discussion and stuff like that. But the question is, how do people behave in this space? And how, the interaction of electronic products with space, with people, how does all of that work together? And I love this example as well. This is a service prototype. So in Japan, I believe, McDonald's wanted to know, would people want table service in their restaurants? And so what they did was they created some shirts, yellow shirts. They printed out some menus, and when people came in, they asked them, are you going to be sitting down? And if they said yes, they said, well, we'll give you a free lunch. Would you try out the service? And so a very low cost way to accomplish some basic questions to understand if people really want to use a service like this. So, and it also helps to understand the interactions and the behaviors and what people want, is questions about how they might pay, all kinds of things. And this ultimately leads to, the how of how are we using these things? And as mentioned, it's about the communication, like we're trying to get reactions from people. We're trying to get more information from people. So prototypes are a way to both extend conversations. They're a way to change the conversation in ways. It's a step up from, let's just say this, from having a conversation, because people put themselves in the moment. When you go to a movie, there's this idea of suspension of disbelief. And prototypes have an aspect of that to them. So they really help us kind of like get people out of a situation. They become less guarded. They talk in different ways. So it's very helpful to learn in these contexts. So what I'm oftentimes doing, and this was from a project when I was working at Grainger, to understand how the territory sales representatives, what they were doing during the day, how they were using the current tools. And they had this laptop that was really slow, that was connected to the internet, took forever to connect, had to go through a VPN, then it had to go into a database. So people would say it took like 20 minutes to get this thing connected. So nobody was using it. They would use their laptop before they left in the morning, and then they would use their laptop at the end of the day or at lunch when they're entering information or orders or things like that. So this helps us understand, getting out there with stuff, and doing just observation, seeing the stuff that exists, helps us understand what people are doing, how they go about the jobs that they're doing, how our tools might fit into this scenario. And I'm going to show this real fast, just because I always do, because I love this video. It represents that a prototype does not have to be complicated. This is a prototype that is not a prototype because she has nothing on her phone, and I just improvised it.
Laid out, navigate faster. I mean, it's all about speed.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. Can you pick up your phone and hold it in your hand? Now you've come out of the call, and I want you to describe to me what you would do. Like, pretending you're doing
Like-
something on your phone. Go ahead. Like you've just come out of the call and you want to do some things. This has been a good call. You have some notes to enter.
Okay.
You have, tell me what you're doing right now.
Okay. I would go to, if possible, so I hit a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, okay, it's 1:30. I just came out of Racine Journal Times from a 1 o'clock appointment. I spoke to that person for half an hour. And I would go to my appointment, go to the notes and say,
So I just loved she like even rotated her phone to enter information. So
lead out
like
everything.
totally in a new place, right? And so what we're using with it in this scenario is what we're drawing from these conversations is what do people do in their day? What are their touch points? How do they go about it? And ultimately at the end of the like our synthesis of this is to say, well, we can't solve every problem, but we might be able to solve that point where before they're going into a client and coming out of a client. So now how do we create an application that might support that context? So we learn a lot in the process, but you know, at the end of the day, our job is to create focused tools. So we can't, again, boil the ocean. We have to figure out what works. And in the case of the prototype with Uber, you know, will people get into a stranger's car on a Saturday night in downtown New York? Well, obviously, they did, because we're in a new place now, right? So this was something I was working on for a startup. It was to bring blowouts, manicures, and makeup to the home. And our first test, if you will, was to say, will people sign up for this service? So what we did was we hacked together a quick website using Squarespace, connected it to Square, the card reader. Square has a calendar application, so we connected it to that, and we got things to work. So we, you know, in this concept or in this task, we've got a protocol, which is we're going to describe our service or product. We're going to describe the needs that are addressed. We're going to describe the, you know, how you can access this. Hey, just sign up here, right? And see how many people actually do it. And then we'll talk to them about why they did or did not sign up. Were they successful? We have a hack together service that might not work, who knows? And then, but on our end, we're understanding what success looks like. So how many people sign up versus how many people don't sign up? So how many people did we get come to our table? How many of those people signed up? So we have a very basic KPI, if you will, right? And so this planning is really important. And there are a couple of ways that, of course, the DFA has to organize this information. There's a prototype planner. It's like, what is your idea? What is the need? You know, the why? What needs to be true here? What's the assumption that, you know, like kids are willing to take food from strangers? There was a project, you know, working in communities to understand if a van driving around could give food to kids, because kids are told to stay away from vans. And then, you know, how will you test that? It doesn't have to be a van. We don't know, have to go get a van. We can rent a van too, you know. What is success? That we get a certain number of people coming to the van, let's say, or we learn why they have not, right? We engage people. So, and then what needs to be done, you know, after this? What new testing will we create? Now, we're in a totally new world at this point in time, because we've got a couple forces going on. One is that we have complex worlds, and we have a lot of social problems, right? And we're not going to get solutions to social problems if we don't involve people in understanding them at a basic level, and then doing some co-creation to really get them into the scenario and letting us know how they would like this problem solved. Because there are all kinds of solutions we can create to all kinds of problems, such as food deserts. And the van is one of those solutions, but there are many others that could be part of that environment. So it's like, so I found an article pretty quickly when I was asked to talk on this topic. And I thought it was great. It was like one of the first ones I pulled up. It was great. It's from HBR. The link is in the back of the deck that you have access to. And people want to be creative and they want to solve problems. We all do that. You know, some people want to do that professionally, but lots of people just want to do it because they enjoy it. And our job is to engage with them. Nobody likes when you tell them how to live their lives. Let's just say that, right? So some principles that are really important are mutual benefit. You can't go in there and say that this is going to benefit me. We're going to go in and do banking within a community. Well, if it just benefits the big bank, nobody is going to participate in that. You know, if it benefits the people in some way, they're going to participate in that. The experiences are more important than the value of what you are doing. So if you can create experiences that engage people, rather than just a tool that helps them do something, an ATM is perhaps a tool, an experience is that perhaps that you have people in the community that help others learn about financial goals and how to plan or something like that. And so it's a different way of engaging community, for example. And that leads to participant interaction. So there are a number of ways that you can get people to participate. You can, if you have the time, teach people to do these processes that you're doing and have them involved on both ends of the spectrum. One, where they're solving the problems for their community, and number two, they're solving the problems for themselves. So there are a number of ways to do this. And what I really liked is this idea of a platform for sharing. This is really perhaps most advanced, but it is like, well, how do we learn from the experience? How do we share the experience amongst teams and amongst people? This could be as simple as Facebook. It could be other tools that empower this. And the outcomes are that really we get deeper experiences and problems, or we get deep experiences to really understand what's going on. We get an understanding of the ecosystem, which is important. And then our viewpoint changes from just that of, you know, value and competition to something of collaboration and learning how to be engaged in, for example, in communities. So this is something that I had been working on. It was a very simple thing. It was a sheet of paper that would be used when you walk. None of the information is a person, but when you walk into a community health clinic, we want to know what's going on with you. The doctors want to know, the providers, the RNs, all kinds of people. We want to know why you're here. We want to know if your past issues, if you're still having issues with them, high blood pressure, all kinds of things. And so I was working with this community health center here in Chicago to understand how this tool could and would be used. And to, for all practical purposes, clean it up, if you will. So like in your instances, you know, you might be saying that, and I've seen these are things that I've seen in the past here, particularly with respect to, you know, the DFA and the YMCA project. So people have talked about brochures, you know, so how can you engage people to help with that? You know, have them draw the brochure, right? What's on here? A website, have them draw the website, the homepage. What is on this website that people are using and how are they using it, right? So you begin with, here, draw this for me, create this for me. And you conclude with conversations of like, well, how does that help you? And then if you have people share across different teams or different people who have worked on their own concepts, you start to learn because they are having conversations between themselves, right? And that's what our job is. And in this instance, what I had done was taken a sheet of paper that existed and started to reframe it in ways that helped us draw information from the patients, like, are you still having issues with something, right? Yes, no, remove this, this is no longer an issue. Why are you here? What are the top 3 reasons? We probably can't get through more than 3 reasons. Sorry, but what are the top 3? You know, what is something you want to ask about that that you don't feel that you should ask about. Because getting people to think about that is as important before they walk in to see the doctor for 15 minutes is as important as anything else. And these are things that we learned through the conversations with RNs. We had doctors and nurses sit down and co-create sheets with us, draw the different parts of these pages and things. And then we sat down with patients and said, why don't you draw what's important here and what you're seeing on this piece of paper? How would you do that differently, right? And that's what co-creation is about. It helps us get information from people. And this is not virtual. I was there, obviously, you can see me. However, it's pretty easy to be in Zoom and to test prototypes and to see what people are doing. And Zoom will record. So you have that advantage of being able to see them share their screen, perhaps having them put something like on a point they're looking at or something like that. And they can walk through an experience, even if it is a drawing on the screen. So you can share with people to really understand like what is happening. You can share a video, right? You can create a video of an experience and share it with them. It's not hard to do. You have 2 people, 3 people, 2 people interacting. Here's some stuff you're interacting with, and somebody's shooting the video. And you can do it on your phone, and you can share it like almost immediately. It's amazing. You can share the sketches. You can have participants report on what their experiences are like with text or photos or anything. They can email when they have a problem. They can email you. Or text a number when they have a problem. It's pretty easy to get things like a number on Google or something like that, and have a way to create a Gmail account to get information. And then of course have participants just simply co-create stuff. How would you like to? For next week, we're going to meet. Can you design a brochure that would be useful for you? And they're probably not going to do it till, the day before, so you remind them and stuff like that. But you can get them to create stuff and you share that with them. And again, the planning. So one of the things that I did was there is the prototype planner, but I also created this little storyboard for an interview. And the idea here was that what you would do is you would sketch your concept. So it could be on a Post-it, just stick it on here. Imagine you're presenting it to a person. Who and where are you presenting this thing to? That could be stick figures on a Post-it again in a description of the environment. Describe for me what that person might say to you. That's an assumption, right? And that's a hypothesis. But it helps you understand the feedback that people might give you as to whether that is useful or not useful. There is not a problem going out in the field and talking to people about concepts you don't think work. That's not you think it'll fail because of these reasons. Wonderful. As long as you think about that ahead of time, that's what's important. And then show why it was a successful test, right? What made this successful? What did you learn from this? What measurement did you get from this prototype, i.e. people signing up? What is it that helped people understand that this was successful? If you created a brochure prototype and shared it with people, and 3 out of the 6 people that saw this liked it, that's good feedback. And that's a KPI that you use. You're not just relying on those 6 people. You're going to do another test and another test. But you at least are getting information that helps you understand whether this was a useful thing. So I have bunches of things within here that are about people. Yan Chipchase is a person I really like, who is a researcher. He does research in communities in typically third world countries. That HBR article that I referred to is here. And then there are people who do prototyping and stuff like that. So it's there are a bunch of links, take a look at, don't take a look at, but all kinds of stuff to really think about in terms of the work you're doing through the course of this project. Okay, so that is me talking, and I think we're about where we wanted to be, about 10 minutes ahead. So can I answer any questions for you?
Well, I have a question for everyone in the room, as people are still thinking about questions, is especially with this, there's a really good opportunity here to engage with stakeholders and young people. And what things will you take back to your team from this presentation? And how might you think about how you're going to engage with stakeholders over the course of this project? So Kia, I'll jump over to you if you'd like to tell us, like what did you learn from this presentation, and what do you want to do with the why this term?
Sorry, I was muted. I think definitely getting some hands-on experience with actually talking to the client and getting that feedback from them is something I'm very looking forward to. So because I haven't really done that before, and it'll be interesting, or being able to translate like paper prototypes that we make physically over onto Zoom to them. Whether that be like via video or even maybe like translate the paper things to mural. That is something that we'll have to experiment and try out, which I'm also looking forward to.
Yeah, so you just brought up something that I think is great, and I'm going to add it into the deck like right now, which is you're going to engage with stakeholders. You're going to engage with people. Your preparation is important for one reason, and that is to gain trust. Our job, my job, is very oftentimes to present a trusting expert who can help you with your problem. And if they don't perceive I can do that, then I have a challenge. So your preparation for that time is really important. So I do know that somebody has brochures or spaces, bulletin boards, whatever, as a base hypothesis from a previous team. And now your job is to essentially walk into that meeting with some sort of preparation that says, what we're here to talk about is what had it happened, what you learned from previous experience. And there could be a simple mural board that says what you learned, and what do you still want to learn in the future. So your preparation is to kind of like establish the current state and get to a future state with their involvement. And then to start, it is possible for you, for example, to say, we came out here, which is this brochure, or this bulletin board that helps people do something in a certain way. What are the other ways that you could do that? We thought of some other ideas that are similar to this outcome, and we want to know your thoughts. And that helps you gain information about what has happened. For example, you might put up a website. Oh, we talked about doing a website, but we didn't do it for blah, 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 blah. This is information that you want to know that may or may not have been transferred effectively to you. But that idea of being able to gain trust with people is going to be important when you sit down and talk with them. So your preparation for the meeting is to set an agenda. It is to, establish where things are at. And then it is to establish how you're going to talk about the things that remain. And this is, in essence, a prototyping scenario as well, because you have the opportunity to learn from them. Okay? Trust is an important concept, really is.
Definitely, and that's the goal of this project, is to really build that relationship and that trust and get to a point where you feel comfortable bringing things to them and creating with them and prompting them to create the brochure, how they envision, and you coming from the designer point of view of really being that supportive person that can really learn and observe and be involved with them, and then provide the situations and the frameworks for these tests and prototypes to occur and be interacted with. And you can continue to ask questions and have discussions because prototyping, like Nicholas said in the beginning, is a type of language. It's a conversation starter. It's a way for people to interact and react to is a really exciting moment to see what resonates and what doesn't. And all of those key reactions and conversations and artifacts that all of you develop over the course of this project are going to inform your final direction you end up going in. But it's great to explore as many as possible during these rounds of iteration to refine and then so that whatever your final concept is, it can be proven over the course of this project through the prototype and tests that you set up and engage with.
I would say that your job throughout this project is to learn. So your first job is to learn how these tools are used and learn from them. And you will do that by doing stuff as opposed to, let's say, writing papers and things like that. So the job is to talk to people and learn from them. And so getting into those contexts as quickly as possible is really important, and doing that as often as possible is important. Iterating is central to design thinking and to designing in general. So it is very important that you really start to get out there and talk to people.
Mm-hmm. And this first week is all about just giving you the tools and the basic understanding for doing the design stuff, and then the why is finishing up the preparations to pair you with the team. So like they're coming, they are there. Don't worry. So your job is just keep learning design and power it through. But Jeremia, if you're on the call, could you also answer a question about like what you learned and what you're going to bring back to your team?
Yeah, sure. I'm like pretty new to design and everything, so I learned about like co-creation. I had always thought about prototyping as like showing users like what your own idea is and then getting feedback on that, but like the value of like letting people tell you or like show you what they want from the product is like really, I think that's like a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
The idea, like a chair. We can buy chairs. We know what chairs are. We know what they look like. And every now and again you see something, you're like, I'd really like something like that. Or I would like it like that, but I'd like it to be a little different. And here's how I'd like it to be. And that idea of really sitting down and articulating that is ultimately what design is about. Some people take that step. They go over that boundary of no return, where they start to make the things that impact their lives, and that's what design's about.
Mm-hmm. And then Junhee, same question.
Yeah, I think I learned about all the different sort of subcategories within prototyping. I'm also pretty new to design, and so I've had almost exclusively experience with just digital prototyping, and so to learn about how, like in this, today, like how to possibly implement some other types of prototyping, as well as just and I think bringing or just smoothing out user testing. I think it's easier said than done, especially over Zoom call, and so I think that's something that I'm gonna bring.
Great.
So learning about interviews is something you only learn about by doing interviews. That's a challenge, and so that's why it's really important to get out there, because you will start to learn how to have the conversation. There's an intro. Tell me about yourself. There are the few questions that you have to ask, and then there's the thing that makes a good interviewer is how you get into the things that the person brings up. How do you dig deeper? So.
Mm-hmm. Great. Cool. Well, Drake, do you have anything to round us out before we head off?
Sure, yeah, I can add something. A key takeaway for me from this presentation was the healthcare survey example. I liked how you took something that like already existed and you simplified it for the user. You made it like easier to understand, and you just really consolidated everything. So translating that to our project would be cool too.
Yeah. Yeah, balancing what is most important for people when they're doing what within the process and what they're looking at, and what are, like, one of the key thoughts that came out of that is, what are the things that are under the surface of the issues I have hypertension, but my mom just died and I'm drinking a lot. That's, not me, but but that is an issue. But if you don't learn about that, you can't help a person, in that context. You're relying on the hypertension numbers instead of the reasons for their existence.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nicholas, for this presentation and all of the in-depth look at how to prototype and test. And this will be things that all of the YMCA teams and everyone here will be doing throughout the term. And excited to get that process moving forward. Some next things. So tomorrow, everyone, we have a Rosebud Thorn, which is going to be a just check-in retrospective opportunity to meet and have a little bit more team bonding time with all of the other members of your cohort who are on this project from all the different schools. Thanks so much, Nicholas. And then after that, we'll be, also on the call will be representatives from some of the past spring projects. So you'll be able to get your questions answered about what they did and why. And it's really just supposed to be a level set so we can make sure that you have everything you need to know about each of those projects, and we'll be good to go once we start pairing you with the project from the Y teams. Any last minute questions, anyone? Cool. Also today from 1 to 2, which is going to be in an hour, LSLAC office hours. So you can set up 20-minute one-on-one times with me if you have any more questions about just anything about this project or anything design related. So let me know by responding in the Slack and we can set those up. And that's 1 to 2 Central. Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow.